I woke before dawn on Christmas morning to the soft glow of streetlights. Filtering through my bedroom curtains, the city was hushed, wrapped in a thin layer of frost that made the bare branches outside sparkle like strings of fairy lights. I could hear the distant hum of early delivery trucks, and the faint aroma of pine from the tree we decorated in the living room downstairs. My heart thumped with a mixture of excitement and nerves, because this Christmas carried a significance far beyond the usual gift-giving rituals. I lay still under the covers, fingers wrapped around the plush duvet, as I thought about the perfect moment I'd been planning for weeks. I felt grateful for the warm apartment we shared in this urban neighborhood with its exposed brick walls and cozy reading nook by the window. Yet beneath that comfort, I sensed the tension that often swelled between family expectations and personal dreams. At 35, I've learned to navigate the delicate balance between holding onto my aspiration and honoring the traditions that shaped me. When I met my husband, Mark, 5 years ago at a holiday charity gala, I was struck by his easy smile and the sincerity in his eyes. He grew up in a Midwestern town where Christmas meant neighborhood crawling and church potlucks, while I spent my holidays in New York apartments crammed with cousins and cousins' friends. Our worlds collided in that grand ballroom, and I felt a spark that convinced me he was the person I wanted by my side. Over the years, we built our own rituals, cooking a turkey together, watching classic holiday films in worn velvet armchairs, and exchanging handwritten letters before unwrapping presents. I cherish how he listens when I talk about my writing dreams, the way he brushes my hair out of my face as I read late into the night, and the steady sense of partnership he brings to our everyday life. The other person who mattered deeply to me this season was my younger sister, Emma. She lives across town in a loft with high ceilings and oversized windows that look out onto the busy avenue below. Emma has always been the free spirit in our family, the one who challenges conventional paths and sleeps under the stars whenever she travels. She's 28 now and works as a photographer for a local magazine, chasing moments in coffee shops and graffiti-laden alleys. Despite our differences, me with my plans sketched out in journals and her with a backpack ready by the door, we share a bond forged in childhood snowball fights, scraped knees, and whispered secrets in the dark. Over the years, I've watched her become fiercely independent, and I've tried to offer support without stifling her creative flame. This year, I knew she was feeling the weight of rent hikes and uncertain gigs, so I'd been saving something special to remind her that she's never alone. On Christmas Eve, I arranged a modest gathering at our apartment, inviting Emma and a few of her friends alongside Mark's colleagues and some neighbors. The living room smelled of cinnamon and roasted chestnuts, the tree glimmered with white lights, and soft carols echoed from a vintage record player. Emma arrived late, cheeks flushed from the cold, laden with homemade cookies and a quirky knit hat she'd picked up during her travels. As I hugged her, I felt a pang of protectiveness mixed with admiration for her fearless spirit. Later, Mark presented Emma with a beautifully wrapped box. My heart stumbled when I realized he had bought her something meaningful, a leather-bound journal embossed with her initials, the very gift I had intended to give her next week. She beamed as she opened it, and Mark's eyes sparkled with pride as he watched her leaf through the blank pages. The room filled with warmth and laughter, but beneath the jingle bells and smiling faces, I wrestled with a surprising ache of disappointment. In the quiet that followed, I forced a smile and congratulated Emma, handing her a cup of spiced cider. As I tried to steady my voice, I brushed off my feelings, reminding myself that the journal was her gift, not mine, and that generosity should always come from the heart. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that Mark and I had lost sight of my plan to celebrate both sisters equally. All week I had slipped into local bookstores after work, searching for just the right journal, the one with creamy pages perfect for her photography notes. Meanwhile, I'd tucked away a small black box on the top shelf of our closet, the one I'd planned to give Mark at sunrise on Christmas Day. It contained a delicate watch engraved with coordinates of the place we first met. That gift was meant to be a private moment between us, a reminder of the night our paths converged under the glow of holiday chandeliers. Now, with Emma's joy glowing like the firelight in the hearth, I couldn't wait until tomorrow. My pulse quickened as I reached for the box. The velvet lining cradled the watch, its silver face reflecting the twinkling tree lights. With a breath, I approached Mark, who was laughing with Emma. I offered the gift, voice trembling, and watched his expression shift as he untied the ribbon. This was the moment I'd saved for Christmas morning. When Mark lifted the lid and saw the watch, his eyes widened, and for a moment he was silent. The silver face caught the morning light, and I watched his chest rise as if he were breathing in a new memory. I can't believe you kept this for me, he said, his voice thick with emotion. He ran his fingertip along the engraved coordinates, tracing the numbers we had whispered to each other on that gala night. I felt a swell of relief that he understood the significance. But beneath it was a tremor of something else, an unease that my perfect plan had been interrupted. By his thoughtful gesture toward Emma, he clasped the watch round his wrist and smiled at me, a quiet brilliance that made the world feel still in that instant. I decided to tell him about the gift I'd chosen for Emma, to reconnect our intentions and remind him that I, too, had been planning a surprise. After breakfast, we settled on the couch with mugs of steaming coffee, the fire crackling in the hearth as soft snowflakes drifted past the window. I took a deep breath and told Mark the story of how I'd found that journal for Emma, describing the way the leather smelled like cedar and the paper felt like a promise. He listened intently, nodding and sipping his coffee, then reached across to squeeze my hand. "I'm sorry," he said, eyes meeting mine. "I got so caught up in wanting to make her happy that I forgot how much effort you were putting in." His apology warmed me, dissolving the tension that had knotted in my chest. We laughed about how competitive we could be when it came to gift giving, comparing it to our old habit of racing through museum exhibits to see whose favorite painting was more popular. In that laughter, I recognized the foundation of our partnership: honesty, empathy, and the willingness to admit mistakes. Later in the morning, Emma arrived at our apartment with her camera slung over one shoulder, her cheeks rosy from the cold. She handed me a wrapped package, a small lens filter she'd been eyeing for weeks, and her grin was bright enough to light the whole room. I hugged her tightly, telling her how much her friendship meant to me, and in her laughter I saw no hint of competition between sisters. Yet as she chatted about her next magazine assignment, I felt a pang of guilt for my earlier jealousy. Emma's world was one of spontaneity and discovery, while mine revolved around plans and the careful placement of details. I realized how easy it was to assume that her joy diminished my own, when in truth her happiness was part of what I loved about her. I watched her photograph the decorations we'd set out: candles in colored jars, a simple wooden sleigh filled with pinnacones, and I felt a renewed sense of camaraderie, rather than rivalry. By midday, the three of us had ventured out for a walk along the frozen riverfront. The city skyline stood stark against the pale winter sky, and our laughter echoed between the skeletal trees. Mark and Emma stumbled over an icy patch and collided in a silly tangle of arms and scarves, and I snapped a photo of them both, their faces flushed and joyful. In that image I saw the true gift of the season: connection. I slipped my arm through Mark's and leaned into his warmth, then reached for Emma's mittened hand. The three of us continued down the path, our breaths mingling in small clouds, as I felt the weight of the morning's uncertainty lift from my shoulders. Instead of dividing my affection between them, I found that sharing it multiplied the warmth in my heart. That evening, back at home, we gathered around the dinner table, with bowls of stew and fresh-baked bread. The cottage lights from the window cast a golden glow, and outside the wind carried distant carols. I looked at Mark and Emma across the table, noticing how their smiles glimmered in the candlelight. I stood up and raised my glass of mulled wine, asking for a toast to family by blood or by heart, and to the unpredictable ways we show our love. Mark laughed and Emma clinked her glass against mine, and in that clink I felt the harmony I'd been seeking. I realized that my plan to give gifts at precisely chosen moments had almost blinded me to the simple joy of being together. The presents themselves mattered far less than the intention behind them, and the shared experience of unwrapping more than just paper. As the night wound down and the last embers in the fireplace flickered, Emma curled up on the couch with her new journal, pen in hand, ready to capture midnight thoughts. Mark and I settled beside her, and he slipped his arm around me. I rested my head on his shoulder and watched Emma write her first words, the pages absorbing her dreams. In the hush that followed, I whispered to Mark how grateful I was that he reminded me of what truly mattered. He kissed the top of my head and murmured that I had reminded him, too, that perfection is overrated. In that shared moment of warmth and love, I felt the ache of earlier morning fade entirely. Our gifts, intended to surprise and delight, had led us here to each other, to Emma, to the bittersweet beauty of imperfection in love. And as I closed my eyes, the glow of the tree lights danced across the room, promising that this Christmas and everyone to come would be defined not by flawless timing, but by the imperfectly perfect way we chose to care for each other. The new year arrived with a crisp chill in the air, and I found myself waking before dawn once more. Though this time my thoughts were tangled not in holiday gifts but in career ambitions. I'd spent the last weeks polishing a manuscript of short stories, each one drawing on the winter memories of my childhood. Mark had cheered me on, brewing strong granitas of espresso and reminding me that my words deserved to be heard. Still, I wrestled with doubt. Emma's photography exhibit was opening downtown in 2 weeks, and everywhere I looked, Her name appeared in vibrant posters, a testament to her talent and drive. I wanted my own work to occupy public walls, to be spoken about in crowded cafes. And yet the comfort of our apartment suddenly felt too small for both our dreams. By mid-January, I secured an appointment with a local editor at a small literary magazine. The day before my meeting, I fussed over elevator speeches, rehearsing metaphors in my head as if they were dance steps. Mark left me sticky notes around the kitchen. You're brilliant. Tell your story, believe in yourself. Emma dropped by that morning, her eyes bright with excitement, clutching a framed photograph of a graffiti angel she'd shot on an abandoned train car. This one's going on the cover, she said, and I hugged her, feeling genuine pride for her success. At the same time, a knot formed in my stomach. Would she always outshine me in the creative world we shared? On the day of the meeting, the magazine's office smelled of fresh ink and desperation, a cluster of mismatched sofas, a whiteboard scrawled with editorial deadlines, and a poster of Sylvia Plath tacked to a corkboard. I sat across from the editor, a woman named June, whose silver-streaked hair lent her an air of quiet authority. My heart raced as I handed over my manuscript. June flipped through pages, her brow furrowing and then softening. Your voice is honest, she said, looking up at me. I think these stories could resonate with a wider audience. Let's talk about a feature. Relief washed over me in a warm wave, and I felt as though I'd crossed a threshold into a new realm of possibility. That evening, Mark and I celebrated with takeout Thai food and candles, toasting to small victories. When I told Emma over the phone, she squealed in delight and invited me to her exhibit's VIP preview. As I thanked her, I noticed the slight tremor in her voice, an undercurrent of strain that she masked with enthusiasm. 2 days later, over steaming mugs of chai at her loft, Emma admitted she was exhausted. The exhibit's success had invited late-night bookings for magazine shoots, gallery talks, and freelance assignments. I don't know how to say no, she confessed, her shoulders slumping. I reached across the table, touching her hand. Let's figure out boundaries, I said. In that moment, I realized how our shared drive to excel sometimes blinded us to our own limits. Late January mornings found me hunched over my laptop, drafting story proposals, while Emma popped in randomly with coffee and camera gear, sharing progress on window installations and seating charts. I loved her energy, but I craved uninterrupted time to write. One afternoon, I accidentally slammed my laptop shut, startling her. I'm sorry, I said. I need a block of time right now. Emma's eyes flickered with hurt. I recognized the same look I'd worn when Mark bought Emma that journal on Christmas Eve. We paused, and in the quiet between us, I whispered, I don't want to push you away. She nodded, packing her camera into its bag. We'll find our balance, she promised. But I wondered if I'd risked our closeness for my own advancement. As February arrived, our city was blanketed in snow once more, and Emma's exhibit stayed open late into the night. I joined her for the closing gala, studying the faces clustered around her photographs, listening to strangers praise her framing of urban decay. Pride swelled in my chest, but it felt crowded by envy. That night, I lay awake beside Mark, staring at the ceiling, my manuscript printed on the bedside table. I asked him quietly, do you think my work could matter as much as Emma's? He turned to face me, eyes steady. Your stories have a heart that only you can write, he said. They matter because they're yours. In that moment, I felt both comforted and restless, aware that I needed to claim my own space in the world. A week later, I received an email from the magazine. They wanted to publish one of my stories as their February feature. Elation and terror mingled inside me, and I spent days editing every comma and paragraph until midnight. When the online issue launched, I clicked the link with trembling fingers. There it was, my byline shining next to Emma's exhibition ad. For her closing night, I shared the page with Mark and Emma, tagging them in my celebratory post. Emma replied almost immediately with a string of heart emojis and a promise to take me out for drinks. For the first time, I felt our successes could sit side by side without overshadowing one another. One chilly afternoon, Mark surprised me with a new desk by the window. He'd scavenged a mid-century modern piece from a salvage yard, refinished it, and set it up overlooking our street. I ran my hand over its smooth surface, tears prickling my eyes. It's perfect, I whispered. He smiled. So you have a place that's just yours. I understood then that love meant supporting each other's dreams while carving out room for individuality. Over the next weeks, I settled into a writing routine by that window, watching pedestrians scurry beneath umbrellas, framing scenes in my mind until they poured onto the page. Emma, adjusting her schedule, began hosting monthly workshops for aspiring photographers, dipping her toes into teaching even as she juggled freelance assignments. I attended her second session and watched compassion shift in her gaze when she guided a nervous teenager through a portrait shoot. Observing her patience, I realized creativity was not a zero-sum game. Each success inspired the other. When I later taught a writing class at the neighborhood library, Emma showed up to take candid shots of the students. Afterward, as we reviewed the photos over hot chocolate, I told her how proud I was. She grinned, right back at you. By early spring, our apartment felt transformed, filled with proofs of our shared growth. My story had garnered positive reviews, and Emma's photos were scheduled to appear in another gallery. Mark cheered each milestone, marking dates on our kitchen calendar with colored stickers. As I traced a sticker with my story's publication date, I realized how much I'd learned since that Christmas, that beneath every gift, beneath every handwritten note or framed photo, lay a willingness to see one another succeed. In the soft light of our living room, with Emma flipping through her workshop portfolio and Mark sketching ideas for his next volunteer project, I felt the deep satisfaction of a community bound by creativity, love, and the promise of stories yet to come.